Welcome to NTD News. I'm Kevin Hogan. Here are today's top stories. Americans honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to the nation. One veteran reminds us what Memorial Day is all about. Nearly 120 employees are suing a Texas hospital for mandating vaccines for all employees. The hospital says employees who refuse the jab will lose their jobs, while workers say they're being treated like guinea pigs. A Pennsylvania lawmaker says the tables are turning on abortion. She talks about the pro-life bills taking shape in her state and across the country. A Black Lives Matter leader said he resigned after learning the ugly truth about the organization. After a year of being on the inside, he said he learned BLM isn't concerned with rebuilding black families. Today, Americans pause to honor the lives of the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for their nation. During remarks on Sunday paying respect to the fallen, President Biden also sent a warning to countries that violate human rights. NTD's Jessica Beatty reports.
We could do nothing but speak out for human rights around the world because that's who we are.
President Biden is warning the leaders of China and Russia human rights abuses will not be tolerated. At his Memorial Day speech in Delaware Sunday, Biden said he already spoke to China's leader about human rights violations, and he'll bring it up with Russia's president too.
I'll be meeting with President Putin in a couple weeks in Geneva, making it clear that we will not stand by and let him abuse those rights.
Biden honored those Americans who made the ultimate sacrifice in service of the nation. He also spoke about the pain of losing a son or daughter.
I know how much the loss hurts. I know the black hole that leaves in the middle of your chest. While I know nothing I can say to ease the pain, I just know that each year it gets a little bit easier.
The president's son, Beau Biden, was a veteran who died 6 years ago from brain cancer. And motorcycles rolled through Washington Sunday to shine a spotlight on veteran suicide prevention. It also hopes to increase efforts to locate prisoners of war and service members who went missing in action.
With the AMVETS continuing this ride and making it not only about POWMI awareness, but veteran suicide, it's making it so much more meaningful for millions of Americans that live with not knowing why or where their loved one is.
One Vietnam veteran reminds us why they're there.
People are forgetting the blood that's been shed for us to be able to assemble, to have the rights of the First Amendment, but to use the rights of the First Amendment with courtesy and understanding of all people.
He says he thinks that's what this ride needs to do.
To stay here, to keep reminding people that we have a right. We fought for this right, we died for this right.
Rolling to Remember is an offshoot of Rolling Thunder, which officially ended its run in 2019 after more than 3 decades. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
Native Americans from all over the United States headed to Pawhuska, Oklahoma for a special sporting event. It's the Indian Relay Horse Racing International Championship held over Memorial Day weekend. Indian Relay is a type of bareback horse racing primarily practiced by Native American tribes in the northern Plains states. In the races, a rider circles a track 3 times and changes horses each time around mid-gallop. Riders leap off the first horse while it's still galloping, jump onto the back of the next horse, and take off as quickly as possible. As many as 30 teams from around the country are joining the competition. The Oklahoman reports that the event has a $140,000 purse this year. It's the biggest in the history of Indian relays. A top GOP negotiator says Republicans and Democrats are getting closer to a deal in talks on a major infrastructure package.
Negotiations between U.S. Democratic President Joe Biden and Republican senators over an infrastructure package are inching forward, even though disagreements remain. Republican Senator Shelley Moore Capito told Fox News Sunday, quote, "I think we can get to real compromise, absolutely, because we're both still in the game." Capito leads a group of 6 Republicans who have been in regular contact with the White House. Her side last week proposed $928 billion to improve roads, bridges, and other traditional infrastructure projects. Much of the funding would come from reallocating money meant for other programs. The Biden administration's latest offer in negotiations is for $1.7 trillion and would include projects such as home care for the elderly. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg described negotiations to ABC's This Week, saying, quote, "There's movement in the right direction, but a lot of concerns. One of the many sticking points, the White House wants to offset the cost of the plan with new taxes on the wealthy and on corporations. When asked about rolling back some of the tax cuts enacted during the Trump administration, Capito said, quote, "I'm not going to vote to overturn those." She also held the line against funding for projects that go beyond physical infrastructure. The talks were expected to continue this week, even though Congress is on a break, with the Senate returning on June 7th.
Two ex-military members of Congress say they're going to stop woke ideology from infiltrating the military. They say they're going to expose the scandalous content of the trainings given to members of the armed services. Representative Dan Crenshaw and Senator Tom Cotton are launching a new campaign to fight woke ideology in the military. They set up a website for whistleblowers to share their stories of training in critical race theory, also known as CRT. Crenshaw, the former Navy SEAL, announced the initiative on Twitter Friday. He tweets, "Enough is enough. We won't let our military fall to woke ideology. We have just launched a whistleblower webpage where you can submit your story." Crenshaw is urging members of the military and other federal employees to report CRT training programs through the site. He says whistleblowers who report to Congress are protected by federal law, and the stories will be shared confidentially with Senator Cotton, a former captain in the Army. CRT draws heavily from Marxist critical theory. It divides people along the lines of race, ethnicity, gender, and other social distinctions, leading to a power struggle between them. Crenshaw says he'll use information from the whistleblowers to show the public what's being taught in the trainings. He tweets, "For too long, progressive Pentagon staffers have been calling the shots for our warfighters, and spineless military commanders have let it happen. Now we are going to expose you." Crenshaw says he'll anonymously publish egregious examples of CRT training if the whistleblower gives permission. Over 100 employees are suing a Texas hospital over a CCP virus vaccine mandate. They say they shouldn't be forced to choose between keeping their jobs and taking an experimental vaccine.
Nearly 120 employees are suing the Houston Methodist Hospital. That's over a requirement that they get a COVID-19 vaccine. The hospital mandate applies to all employees, while the lawsuit says that the employees are being forced to act as human guinea pigs for an experimental vaccine. Mark Boom is the CEO and president of Houston Methodist. In a statement, Boom said 99% of the hospital's employees have gotten a vaccine. He says it's legal for healthcare institutions to require vaccines, and they already do that for the flu. He claims the employees who don't want to get vaccinated are not putting patients first. Attorney Jared Woodfill is representing the employees. He told ABC News that the hospital's policy violates the Nuremberg Code of 1947. The code was written after the fall of the Nazis and establishes ethical practices for human experimentation. The lawsuit says many aspects aren't yet known about the effects of the mRNA vaccines, so they're considered experimental. The lawsuit cites a letter from Boom stating that employees have until June 7th to get a vaccine before they start facing disciplinary consequences and eventually lose their jobs.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis says again that his state won't embrace so-called vaccine passports. This comes amidst confusion about whether airplane and cruise travelers will follow a federally mandated system to show proof of vaccination. Florida passed a bill banning vaccine passport-like systems in early May, and DeSantis said he will enforce Florida law regarding vaccine passports. This means that some cruise lines, which have a lot of business in Florida, could be at risk of violating the state law. For example, Celebrity Cruises gained approval from the CDC to require proof of vaccination, but DeSantis said Celebrity Cruises would be breaking Florida law if it made passengers show proof of vaccination against COVID-19. Despite statements from the governor, Celebrity Cruises say they'll proceed with their plans and will require people to show proof of vaccination. State lawmakers across the country are introducing and passing pro-life bills at a rapid rate. Most recently, Pennsylvania's House Health Committee advanced 3 pro-life bills. NTD speaks with one of the bill's authors. Here are the details.
If you get life right, you'll get everything else right.
Pennsylvania State Representative Stephanie Borowitz is determined to protect life in her state. She says this is because life is the foundation of everything else.
As a society, we've walked away from our morals, our values, our principles, what God's word tells us about life. And right in the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so this is a right of the unborn to life.
Last week, Pennsylvania's House Health Committee advanced 3 pro-life bills. One of them would ban abortions once a fetal heartbeat is detected. Borowitz introduced the bill, and it's the strongest pro-life measure in the state's history. The other 2 bills would ban abortions that are based on Down syndrome diagnosis and require that parents have the final decision-making power over their child's remains in cases of miscarriage and abortion. The 3 bills are now moving to the Pennsylvania House for consideration. These are the latest among a wave of pro-life bills being introduced across the nation, and Borowitz is optimistic the tables are turning on abortion.
This is our time. I believe that the tables are turning on this, and we're going to get this right in America, and it's going to lead us to a new freedom in America, like Abraham Lincoln said in the struggle they went through. This is a huge struggle of our time to make it right, and I believe it's going to open the doors for the greatest nation on this earth to a newfound freedom again.
The Supreme Court is going to take up an abortion case in October, and it might reconsider Roe v. Wade. This is giving hope to the pro-life movement.
Texas just signed the heartbeat bill, and now they're doing a bill from conception. So they are really lining themselves up and ready to go so that if the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade, and I'll say when they overturn Roe versus Wade, that they'll have their state laws ready to protect those babies. And that's what I want for Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania's governor has made it clear he will veto any anti-abortion bill that comes across his desk. He claims abortion is a reproductive right. But Borowitz says whether the governor vetoes this legislation is irrelevant. She explains that ultimately she's accountable to God, and the bills would also raise awareness about the sanctity of life.
Texas Democrats abandoned the House floor in an effort to stop a sweeping election overhaul bill from being passed. The bill had already passed the state's Senate. The Democrat lawmakers managed to defeat the bill temporarily by breaking the quorum needed to hold a final vote on the bill. Quorum refers to the number of lawmakers needed on the floor to hold a vote. According to the state's House rules, at least 100 members must be present to conduct business. Media reports say House Democratic Caucus Chair Chris Turner sent a text message telling Democrats to leave the chamber discreetly ahead of the midnight deadline. The Texas House Republican Caucus condemned these actions, and Governor Greg Abbott, who supports the bill, vows to revisit it in a special session. The founder of a Black Lives Matter chapter in Minnesota has resigned. He claims the organization isn't concerned about helping black communities or improving the education quality in the city of Minneapolis. That's according to a video published last week. Take a look.
Rashard Turner was born in Minneapolis. After his father was shot and killed when he was 2 years old, he went on to become the first in his family to earn a college degree. Turner was the founder of a Black Lives Matter chapter in St. Paul, Minnesota. In a video released by Take Charge, Turner said he became disillusioned about a year after becoming an insider in the left-wing organization.
However, after a year on the inside, I learned they had little concern for rebuilding black families, and they cared even less about improving the quality of education for students in Minneapolis. That was made clear when they publicly denounced charter schools alongside the teachers' union.
The group Take Charge rejects ideas that Black Lives Matter promotes, and that includes claims linked to critical race theory that the United States is inherently racist.
I was an insider in Black Lives Matter, and I learned the ugly truth. The moratorium on charter schools does not support rebuilding the black family, but it does create barriers to a better education for black children.
Though he resigned from BLM, he says he hasn't stopped working to improve black lives and help them get access to great education. Black Lives Matter didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. This comes after BLM co-founder Patricia Cullors resigned following a New York Post report. The report said Cullors purchased 4 homes for over $3 million. She asserted she did not misuse any donations to Black Lives Matter. Various polls show that a year after George Floyd's death, support for BLM has plummeted, and so has support for its calls to defund the police.
A man accused of shooting 3 people in Times Square is now back in New York. Farrakhan Muhammad was arrested by U.S. Marshals on May 11th at a McDonald's in Stark, Florida. He was extradited from Florida to New York and formally charged Friday night. Prosecutors say on May 8th he opened fire, injuring a 4-year-old girl and 2 women. All 3 are now out of the hospital. Muhammad says he wasn't in New York at the time of the shooting, but authorities say he was targeting his brother. Charges against Muhammad include attempted murder, assault, and criminal use of a firearm. There's no word on whether he has an attorney or how he's pleading. Coming up, a retired firefighter teaches young people how to fix cars, He keeps local kids out of trouble and puts them on the path to career success. That and more on NTD News.
If you're like most of us, you're probably getting fed up with the nonsense that's going on in the banking system. Did you know that top U.S. banks have recently amended their depositor terms and conditions to include the words bank failure and what's required of you in 24 hours if, or should I say when, it happens? Don't get blindsided by your bank. Call GSI Exchange today to pick up your complimentary copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide at 866-424-2382. We'll also send you the required format to file with your bank within 24 hours of their failure, which is now required by the top banks to avoid freezing of your funds. Yes, the top banks can now freeze your money. The world is in a strange place, and banks are constantly changing the rules. So stay on top of the current events that really matter by calling GSI Exchange and requesting your free guide at 866-424-2382.
Navigating a world of economic madness, you need to have the right guide. What do today's decisions mean for your tomorrow? We ask why. What's the alternative? Uncover the deeper reasons and the hidden influences, and highlight the real opportunities for profit. At NTD Business, we connect the dots for you. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. A Washington state man's dream of creating his own engagement ring for his future bride is coming true. It's all thanks to a very lucky find. 26-year-old Christian Leiden panned for gold in his home state, and after 5 years, he had enough to make the band. Then it was time to look for the diamond, so he drove out to Arkansas's Crater of Diamonds State Park to find the rock. After 3 days in Arkansas, using his own homemade mining equipment, he turned up 2.2 carat yellow diamond. It's the largest that has been found at the park since last October, when a visitor found a 4.5 carat yellow diamond. Back home, Leiden pulled out the diamond to propose, and his girlfriend said yes. The two haven't found a jeweler to mount the stone yet, but Leiden says they're not in any major hurry. A retired Chicago firefighter started a nonprofit program to get at-risk youth off the streets and learning practical skills. His goal is to give them a better chance in life, but he tells NTD of the program's struggles during the pandemic.
Kenneth Trotter opened Mach 1 Mentoring in 2014. The program teaches basic auto mechanic skills to at-risk youth.
I've seen a lot of young men and women on the streets and, fighting a war that they just couldn't, you just couldn't understand it. They didn't know why they were doing it.
Most students come from low-income families. Enrollment in the program is tuition-free. Trotter tells NTD the value of their hands-on learning.
Once you teach them that, they turn into little monsters. They love it because they've achieved this. And once they learn it and understand it, they're all over the shop.
Trotter served for 27 years as a lieutenant with the Chicago Fire Department. He says that this is just another way of serving the community.
I'm trying my best to make it as easy as possible for the students to be able to come in here and learn skills that will give them a better chance in life.
Because of the pandemic lockdown, Trotter nearly closed his shop. The program had to reduce its number of instructors from 10 down to 3.
We have one student that graduated out of our program and went to Lincoln Tech and graduated from there. And now he works for O'Reilly's and he's a manager. And it all started from him being in this program.
And it's a good thing for the kids to learn because they get to work with the hands, their mind, the knowledge, and the upkeep of the older vehicles.
They're knowledgeable about cars and engines, transmissions, rear ends, brakes, cooling system, electrical systems, because those are the things that we teach. We teach everything from general maintenance to full auto restoration.
The program provides a varied collection of old cars for the students to work on. Its slogan is, "Old cars save young lives, and young lives revive old dead cars."
It's so deep in our heart that we're really trying to be here for our youth, just to, help them have a better chance at life. But I can't do it by myself.
Trotter says more youth are showing interest in Mach 1 mentoring, but he now struggles to keep his program open due to lack of donors and sponsors during the lockdown. Nonetheless, he will continue to persevere.
London police have busted a huge money laundering operation. That's after watching a man struggle to carry bags full of cash. Detectives saw the man lugging bags from an apartment to a car in June of last year. They stopped him and found a considerable amount of cash. The search of the apartment uncovered more cash, about $7 million in all. On top of that, nearly $60,000 was discovered at another address. 3 men pleaded guilty to conspiracy and other charges. They were sentenced Friday, receiving between 1 and 3 years in prison. The bust is the largest cash amount ever seized by London's police force. And just ahead, a stable in Russia takes in old horses and gives them a better life. Some surpass their life expectancy by decades, and that's all thanks to the way they're treated. Stay tuned to find out more. A stable in Russia is giving old horses a new lease on life. Named Freedom, it tends to the needs of 9 horses daily. NTD's Arian Pastar has the story.
The gate to this paddock is opened each morning, and the horses can freely enjoy the pastures practically all day. The shelter is called Freedom and aims to give horses a better quality of life than being confined to stables all day.
They have helped men in work in the household. Why should we give them away somewhere? Let them just walk and have a rest until the last graze.
One of the owners has been passionate about horses since childhood and opened her first horse stable in 2014. But it wasn't originally intended for elderly animals. Looking to improve the conditions for the horses, they moved the sanctuary to this current location in central Russia. The horse shelter began to attract other horse breeders who would bring their retired horses that could no longer continue their normal life.
We have horses with different problems. Some have problems with their legs, some have stomach problems, some with heart problems, and in some cases with the brain.
It's feeding time. As well as hay, horses are fed cereals.
Each horse receives its own food diet, depending on the horse and on its load.
In addition to their own 5 horses, they take care of 9 more horses for other people who pay 9,000 rubles per month, which is about $120. That covers the horse's nutrition.
In natural conditions, horses can live more than 40 years. In the stables, they barely live up to 20 years. So those owners who want to extend the life of their pets can arrange for them, so to say, a free life.
Some of the horses brought here were expected to live no longer than a year, but are still alive and kicking. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Russia's brightest students were rewarded for their scholarly achievements with their first Vienna ball in Moscow. It's a throwback to a bygone era of imperial splendor. The glitzy ball is back for the first time in 2 years after being canceled last year amid the pandemic. All participants were between 18 and 26 years old. They had either graduated with honor from their schools or received university accolades. But good grades aren't the only requirement for an invite. Young hopefuls must undergo an elimination process to make it to the dance floor in gowns and black tails. Virus curbs limited the number of guests from 2,000 to 1,500. All attendees were also required to provide a negative virus test or vaccine certificate. And that's all for now. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Kevin Hogan.
we have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.